Talk to me about this plan, just in summary, and how this will impact not only Black men, but all Black people.
Sure. So look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother worked hard, she saved up, and by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home.
We are exactly 3 weeks out from the election, and now Kamala Harris is finally making a desperate plea to the Black community. I find this very interesting, what we're about to get into today, because she went on Roland Martin, roly-poly, right? And she also stopped by the Shade Room, and she did interviews. And it's supposed to be all about Black men in particular, but the Black community, because the polls have come out, and it's just a disaster for her right now. And so this is just a desperate move at the very last minute. And before we get to them, I just want to start with the facts. Let's look at the actual poll numbers.
Yeah, let's talk about young Black men in particular. Sometimes there's a trend line. You know, I look at the polls all the time, and sometimes there's a trend line that I never noticed before and make me go, whoa. This is one of them, all right? This is the Democratic margin among Black men under the age of 45 in presidential elections. You go back to November of 2012, what do you see? You see Obama by 81. Clinton only won him by 63. Then we're all the way down to Biden last time around by 53. A tremendous drop already. And then you take a look at the average of the most recent polls, and Kamala Harris is up by only 41 points. That is about half the margin that Obama won them by back in November of 2012. And this, I think, is, you know, when Barack Obama goes in last week when he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, essentially talking to young Black men, he made it seem like it was a Kamala Harris specific problem. This is part of a long-standing trend of young Black men moving away from the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris is just the latest to face that magnitude of younger Black men going towards the Republicans.
Okay, so let's just give CNN some credit for actually telling the truth here, because we know other individuals would probably blame it on white supremacy, but they're really talking about the facts. The Democratic Party and their lies and their messaging is starting to expire when it comes to Black men, in particularly younger Black men who see the world differently now. And this is why Kamala Harris is scrambling here at the last minute, trying to pander to Black men, because the writing is finally on the wall and they see, hey, we don't have a good chance of winning this election if we're already losing in this way with the Black community. Now, it's not just Black men, it's Black women too. Look at this.
But here, there isn't a trend line almost until we get to Kamala Harris. So again, this is a Black margin among Black women. Look, Obama won him by 93, very large margin. Clinton won him by 93, a very large margin. Biden did a little bit worse at 85. But then you look here, and you get a 71-point margin. Now again, these are large margins, but the bottom line is, when you're talking about the base of the Democratic Party, you would think that Kamala Harris would do very well among Black women based upon history, and of course she would be the first Black woman president, but she's actually doing the worst for a Democratic candidate among Black women since 1960, if this holds, John.
And again,
okay, so since 1960, wow. So let's just get to the bottom line here. Is this more about the fact that she's a woman, or is it about the fact that we know she's ill-equipped to be the next president of the United States? Because her record is a disaster. Her ability to do interviews, it's a disaster. Her image is a disaster. Okay, there's a reason we didn't hear about Kamala Harris while she was vice president. Why is that? Because they had to tell her to stop doing interviews because she was making the administration look bad. Why is it now that she's finally talking to Black people? Because she has no choice at this point. If it was up to her, she wouldn't be going on to the Shade Room. She wouldn't be sitting down with Roland Martin. She has to at this point. So that's how I see it. But before we go any further, let's look at this agenda that she has for Black men. Watch.
One more thing I want to ask you before you go, and I think it's the fun part. I want to ask you about your plan for Black men.
Yes.
It's something huge
Yes.
that you have just released this week. We're talking about 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 to Black entrepreneurs, men and women, correct? Expanding access to bank accounts, expanding the child tax credit. Many things that you're doing, housing, lowering rent, making it affordable to buy a house for first-time home buyers.
Correct.
Talk to me about this plan, just in summary, and how this will impact not only Black men, but all Black people.
Sure. So look, I grew up I grew up in the middle class. My mother worked hard, she saved up, and by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. I will never forget where I came from. Okay, by the way, my opponent, Donald Trump, was handed $400 million basically on a silver platter and filed for bankruptcy 6 times. So just keep that in mind about who's coming from where. I know the ambitions, the aspirations, the incredible work ethic that exists in our community. I know the dreams that exist, but not everyone has started out on the same base in terms of being able to realize their goals and their dreams.
Okay, just facts only before I give you my opinion. Number one, she wasn't middle class. Okay, can we finally accept that as a fact? Number two, Donald Trump did not get a loan for $400 million. All right, so there's that. And number three, no one cares. Even if it was true you were middle class, what does that have to do with you being prepared to be the commander in chief? It has nothing. Donald Trump was already the president. Okay, there have been plenty of presidents who inherit more money than former President Trump. So is that a knock on them too? I mean, that's what I don't understand when they ask her a simple question. Why does she have to break out with the middle class comment? Didn't she learn that already? Don't do that. It's been turned into a meme. You are a joke when you say things like that. Just give us the bottom line. So, of course, after about 2 minutes, she finally gets to the answer to the question, like, what are you exactly going to do? And she continues to pitch the policies that we know are not actually going to make an impact. Let's hear that.
I'm going to change so that the tax deduction for a startup small business, change it from what it is, it's $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000 to $50,000. And included in that, knowing that a lot of startup businesses then have overhead around, for example, what they need to do to buy equipment. For those who are startup and don't have the connections historically, a $20,000 forgivable loan for them to be able, for example, to pay to set up a really good website.
The website is not really going to be a deciding factor on whether I can launch my business or not, okay? And this still speaks to the problem I've always had with the way that she describes these policies. Context matters. And she's placing the wrong policy in the wrong context. Why not just say, my number one way that I'm going to help entrepreneurs thrive in this country, whether you're blue, yellow, red, white, or green, I'm going to give you a $20,000 forgivable loan. Done. Period. Like, why do you have to tell me middle class, that you grew up in the middle class? Why do you have to take me, the scenic route? Just, can we get to the destination and make sure it makes sense? So those are a couple of clips from the Shade Room, and I can link the full interview in the description below. But let's move to roly-poly Roland Martin and what she had to say about the corporate taxes.
What will Vice President do if she's president deal with corporate tax rate? And so you talked about increasing it. Will that mean a certain cap? So let's say if you 50 million, 100 million revenue or less, will that go up? Or will that corporate tax rate apply to all businesses?
So first of all, the corporate tax rate years ago was in the 30s. So I'm not doing that. But in terms of tax cuts for middle class families, my agenda is all about tax cuts for middle class families and no tax rate hike for anybody making less than $400,000 a year. But my approach is also about giving 100 million Americans a tax cut in terms of middle class tax cuts.
That didn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, so can you be clear? Are you going to allow the Trump tax cuts to expire? That should be the first question if she was elected. Hey, Madam Vice President, if you get elected, will you be removing all of the tax cuts that Trump put into place? All of them, from the bottom to the top. Right? So that's question number one. Question number two, she didn't even answer the question about corporate businesses, because corporate businesses, there's some only make $1 million on an annual basis and some make $100 million on an annual basis. So, and then of course, trying to provide a tax cut to middle class families, that's already been done. That's happening right now. Okay, so if you're wondering why she is so confusing when it comes to answering these questions as it pertains to policies, I think because she spends too much time doing this.
This man is dangerous. Not to mention Roland. Let's fast forward to right now. His staff won't let him do a 60 Minutes interview. Every president for the last half century has done one. Anyone who's running for president. Everyone has done it, except Donald Trump. He will not debate me again. I put out my medical records. He won't put out his medical records. And you have to ask, why is his staff doing that? And it may be because they think he's just not ready.
See, that's the mistake that they make. They cross the line with their obsession when it comes to Trump, that they don't even work on the fundamental thing as it pertains to running this campaign. Can you communicate your message effectively? And she can't, because she has Trump derangement syndrome. Every time there's a question about Trump, she starts to shake. Now, there's another clip that actually makes my point for me, by the way. But before we get there, do me a favor. If you're getting value from this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you want to support us further, you can go to the link in the description below, grab yourself a t-shirt, or buy us a cup of coffee. Now, this clip sums up exactly what her problem is, because she's so focused on Trump instead of focusing on her speaking skills. Listen to this.
There's this whole, I talked with somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation. What does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you?
I don't know. I know that your record shows us that you're the most liberal Democratic candidate to run for president. I know those policies that you truly believe in, not the policies you're trying to sell people to get votes. I know those policies will ruin this country. I know that. And I also know this isn't who you really are. You don't believe in what you keep telling people, okay? Because if you did, you would absolutely sound believable, but you don't. Why is it that you're losing support when it comes to black people? Why is it that you're the worst polling Democrat to run against former President Trump? There's a reason for that. And I think it boils down to the fact that people know that it's more likely that she is fake than she is actually authentic. So once again, as I've stated since the beginning of this whole nomination of Vice President Kamala Harris, this is all at the last minute for the Democratic Party. If they could go back, she wouldn't be the candidate. We know that. Joe Biden wouldn't have put up a fight there towards the end. We know that. But this is who they have to settle with at this point. And it might just cost them the next 4 years, because she is not a strong candidate. She's ill-equipped to be the president. It's nothing to do with her gender. It's got everything to do with her record, her leadership skills, her level of competence, the way she goes out and explains her policies or the lack thereof, the fact that she's scrambling at the last minute to finally talk to the black community by going on black media. Oh yeah, but it's only 3 weeks from the election. What happened a month ago or 2 months ago? So I think that actually tells the story of her campaign and why it's headed to a defeat. So that's my opinion. What do you guys think about this desperate attempt from Kamala Harris and her campaign to pander to more black people? Having said that, if you missed what actually got us here, and I'm talking about the comment that Obama made to black men where he criticized us for not supporting Kamala Harris, there's a video where I dive deep on that. If you want to see it, you can click on it because it's coming up right now.